Enough, we need to do our introductions again for posterity of the recording. I'm Dan Sloan. I'm the Tech Services Manager. And Connie.
I'm Connie Broik. I am the Customer Service Desk Manager and the Project Manager for the Technology Department.
So we have a slide that you can't see, unfortunately, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you what's there. So as a background for the fiscal year, we're really just wrapping up. From COVID and ESSER expenditures, it fell into 5 buckets. Communications, we spent approximately $564,000 on keeping the community informed from a technology perspective. So we started up a call center for family and student questions, of which there were many, as we had to deal with folks trying to get their students online and connect to class. It was just it was a very interesting year in that respect. We spent approximately $2.6 million on internet connectivity, which included hotspots. I think over the course of the last fiscal year, we had up to 10,000 hotspots in use at one point. We have MediaCom in place as well for places that we could get that installed. The one-to-one initiative, Shashank Arora mentioned that we purchased over 10,000 laptops. That's actually not quite accurate. I think we purchased close to 15,000 laptops. Partly that was due to end-of-lease replacements. Partly that was due to just having enough spare equipment on hand so that so students weren't out a laptop at any one time. So that was to supplement a reliable replacement repair program, as well as our computer lease requirements. We spent an additional $158,000 on cybersecurity. Specifically, we were hooking up a outdoor wireless network, additional licensing of remote access, setting up a VPN system so that students could come in and their access to the internet would continue to be filtered and meet the Child Internet Protection Act requirements. And the last little bit was $215,000 came from the state to set up Canvas. And that was our learning management system, integrates with Infinite Campus, integrates with Microsoft Teams, and it was just a very integral part of our system. Let's see if I can get on my next slide here, maybe. So the rationale behind these expenditures comes from the Council of Greater City Schools. That's a consortium of I shouldn't say all, many of the largest school districts in the nation. They provide guidance and they provide resources, and the guidelines they gave us we're looking for interoperability. We need to have our expenditures to be mission and vision aligned. We have to meet process efficiency, quality, effectiveness improvements. Our curriculum and our learning management system need to be aligned. We need to have a safe learning environment, and we have to have equitable access to technology and the internet. And that was really what we were striving for in our expenditures. So the impact of our investment was on the one-to-one device program. We rolled out approximately 22,000 devices in the spring of 2020. We rolled out another 12,000 or so in the fall of 2020 to hook up the elementary students. That family and student support line was a wonderful tool in that it augmented our existing system that staff and student were able to access in terms of answering their problems. This one was devoted to the students, and in some cases they rolled them over in the multi-language folks as well, just to support everybody as much as possible. Over 3 years.
Hey Dan, we got a message that we're able to present. Do you have the button?
Nope. It says only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
Yeah, I saw Erin come in as the organizer, and then I saw her leave, but nobody was promoted to presenter.
So, unfortunately. So, our 3-year fund utilization plan. In 2021, so our coming year, we're going to continue to develop our one-to-one device program. We're going to sustain our internet connectivity program. So we're expecting to expend more money on hotspots and other tools necessary to get students connected to the internet. And that's where that ECF funding is coming in. I believe we also have a grant from the City of Des Moines to assist with that as well. We're going to sustain that family and student technical support desk. We're going to continue our cybersecurity issues, our diligence. We really don't want to fall victim to any sort of cybersecurity attacks. We've seen that happen in the state of Iowa, and we are on guard. We're going to further develop our software integration. We're going to implement we're going to be supporting the implementation of that virtual campus secondary program. So we had the high school that was really established before we did this. We're going to have a middle school going forward. In 2022, the change really is working on developing partnerships for the internet connectivity program. There is an effort within the greater Des Moines area to provide internet to cities, and we're hoping to partner with that. Everything else is pretty much just continuing or furthering or sustaining the various programs. In 2023-24, I guess at that point, yeah, it's what we've currently got on the slide is it's basically the same as 22-23. We're going to continue to sustain the one-to-one device program. We're going to develop partnerships for the internet connectivity, and we're going to sustain the support systems as necessary. Now, let's see. Let me talk about one-to-one for just a moment.
Can you read that if I'm pointing that at my screen? Whoops. I'm trying to point my camera at my other screen. Can you even read it though?
Yes, we can see that. So Mary, if let's see, Connie, how about you turn your video off? We'll see more of Mary's screen. Okay, so if I turn my video off, I suspect everybody will see some more.
And there we go. There's Mary's head.
All right. So Mary, if we can back up, I think the first slide, a technology background one that shows the slices of the pie, I think is valuable. There we go. So you see that big red portion there. That is the big purchase we made on towards the one-to-one initiative. And going forward, we're going to be spending a fair amount of money on that. Now, Shashank talked about wanting to have a sustainable expense. It's important to know that this expense was factored into a sustainable budget before the pandemic came. We are taking advantage of these funds to make it more sustainable. when we started buying computers to bring up to a possibility of doing a one-to-one initiative, it came in spurts. So, you know, we bought 4,000 computers this year, and we bought 8,000 computers another year, and we bought 13,000 computers another year. And that puts a strain on the district's budget in terms of predictability. So we're going to be using these funds to make our budget more predictable. We have shifted funds out of the general fund into PEPAL expenses. And overall, this is going to be, we should be saving the district approximately $1 million a year, hopefully. It's just going to be a better program altogether. So, Barry, let's go ahead. I think we can show the 3-year fund utilization planned. I pretty much read this screen to you, so there shouldn't be anything new here. However, since we're recording this session, folks might want to actually see it. So let's go ahead and move on to connections. Next slide. We connect our expenditures in 2 different ways here. So we have the board goal action plans, where we're looking for equitable access and student internet safety. And then on the pandemic side, we're talking about distributed communication and remote learning. And that remote learning and virtual campus really is that one-to-one device program, the integration of Microsoft Teams and the Canvas learning management system. Just integral to our educational system at this point. Next slide. So monitoring. One of the things they want us to do here is to make sure that the expenditures that we're making are monitored, and we're being responsible about our stewardship here. So in terms of implementation, technology leadership meets weekly to discuss how things are going, how to improve on a weekly basis. From an impact standpoint, much of this has to do with internet safety. So we have response reports, we have active threat reports, we have inventory level monitors. In that respect, as an example, if a school, a particular building is running low on inventory, they reach out to us, we provide additional inventory as necessary, just so that students don't have a loss of internet loss of technology, basically. So if you've got a device that breaks, they bring it to their building technology specialist. The building technology specialist hands them another computer, rather than wait for something that's been stuck in service. And then, of course, we have service level monitors. So last year, due to parts breakdowns and part shortages, we had devices on the shelf waiting for parts, and we try to keep a good close track of that. And that's pretty much everything I've got to say. Connie, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. I think over the past year, we've certainly been able to be a little more laser focused on what our priorities are. And as we continue to work forward, one of the things that Dan and I are working on is a more formal one-to-one program. And he mentioned that in year 1, that we are going to get some consistency across the buildings and some guidance from technology for the buildings to know how to navigate that situation. Because I think we can all agree that we would not implement a one-to-one program in a couple of, well, I think it was weeks, but I'll say months. That was a Herculean activity, and I think we did okay, but I think that also shows us an opportunity for growth in that area.
So are there any questions from you folks? Jessica, you're still muted. There we go.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it took a while for the computer to recognize my button clicking. I'm wondering if you're thinking about at all potential cost savings from printing with our learning management system with Canvas and having one-to-one computers. We may not have to print as much materials for students to have in class. That's always been a big expenditure for school budgets, is how much are we sending to the print shop? And so I don't know. I mean, there are still going to be printing things that we have to do. There's still going to be those costs, but I think it may be reduced if we can have materials available online, especially if students have access to computers that they can take with them. And our students from the one-to-one, I guess my question is, are they going to be able to take their computers home with them throughout the school year? Because being able to access that at home is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's part of the conversation that we're having, and what I would like to do is talk at the different levels. I'm hearing different versions of approaches. Elementary tends not to be as excited about sending those devices home and doing things electronically. They tend to lean on printed materials more so than high schools. And so trying to find that space for each level to work comfortably and consistently so that we aren't throwing off the whole thing if Finley decides to do it one way and Hubble does it another way, and then they kind of merge into the middle school area, and then we've got some differences there. So that's part of it. And I know that Print Shop was heavily involved in the COVID just for signage as we move through. And then I think over the year, trying to get handouts to kids was next to impossible. I think we did that and kids lined up and so on, but certainly opened the door for more digital.
Yes, there were definitely schools that were trying to meet the gap, particularly at the beginning of this pandemic when internet connectivity was so spotty. There were schools that were printing out packets and hand delivering them. Now Beth Sloan put a note in here that says, when we mention internet connectivity, do we only mean middle and high school students? And as of right now, that is no. As a matter of fact, the current recommendation is, if we're going to be handing out hotspots as a method of internet connectivity, we should be handing it out one per student, not one per family, not one per two students, one per student. And that has to do with bandwidth concerns. Any other questions?
Does that include preschool as well?
It's a good question. Last year, the decision was made that yes, it included preschool.
Yeah, and you can throw out things beyond questions, ideas, feedback.
So I've got first a comment and then a question. And the comment is to thank you to the technology staff. Like you mentioned before, Connie, the lift that your department undertook as we started to realize it. And by the way, anyone don't know, my name is Joe Spees. I am both a parent and an administrator in the district. So I do have multiple lenses that I kind of approach this from. As we were figuring out what our new reality was going to look like, your department, I would argue, probably say more than any other, shouldered such a huge part of the lift in terms of trying to do our best to continue to educate kids. And so you don't hear it enough. Thank you for everything that you've done. And I know that I speak for a whole lot of people, educators, families, when I say that. So thank you for all that you're doing and all that you've done and all that you will continue to do. My question, and I know that I've brought this up in conversations over email we've had before, is what is the current status of an internet activity monitoring software platform? A GoGuardian, a Securely, something like that. And I guess I throw that out there for a few different reasons. One, with safety being one of the pillars that we have, There are teachers, there are lots of parents and guardians that I've talked to that have talked about, my kid now has this device in their possession and can do all these things that oftentimes the students know more than the adults do about what is possible, where they can go with it, and they feel that they don't have the tools to properly support, supervise, monitor what their child is doing. Also from an engagement standpoint, there were situations last year, and I'm now granted this is middle school is where I'm at. I had multiple students sitting in class playing games with each other. And I would say that is actually very age appropriate. It's not fair to expect 12-year-olds to focus on their ELA work when they can sit there and be playing games, social games with other people within the classroom, within the school, within, you know, the world. And I know that there are a lot of software platforms out there that do a lot of in terms of monitoring, in terms of blocking, in terms of communicating with parents, families. There's obviously a cost to that. I know the whole concept of one not wanting to fall off the cliff, that is real, especially in technology, because it's there in general as well as technology keeps moving and changing. So I know that's an ever-present part of this. But I do know that both teachers and families, at least at Hoyt, where I'm at, have been very vocal and very interested in having access to a software platform like that, especially when they hear neighboring districts that have it and the benefits that it has. Like I know Southeast Polk is one that does use one of those programs. And so, yeah, I'll stop talking. I've talked enough. But just what is our status with looking at, are we looking at that at all? Are we starting the process toward getting bids and doing a trial? Just where are we at with that?
So, Joe, the quick answer is yes. We're actively looking at least 5 different products. We're going to be holding auditions, so to speak, and we're going to be working with a team of educators to determine what is the best fit for the classroom, and that also meets the technology needs.
That's wonderful to hear. Is there a projected timeline for that process?
That's an effort that we are doing with curriculum. To be honest with you, technology has vetted 5 programs that we feel are safe ones to look at, and we pass that information on to a couple of folks in curriculum. And literally, we're talking about that this week and saying, okay, what do we need to do, and who do we need to get on board to look at that? I know from Hoyt's standpoint, you folks have been looking at a specific item and wanted to do a pilot with that, and we kind of put the brakes on it because we wanted to make sure that this was the comprehensive solution. So I know I've got Hoyt on the list of the folks to help guide that decision.
Yep, that would be great. And obviously, I know that there are the processes that we have to go through and everything.
Right.
And we want to make a wise decision for the resources and for the tools that'll come with it. At the same time, I know the sooner the better. As we start up the new school year with trying to establish routines, expectations with students and everything, the sooner we can have that tool at our disposal, the better off it'll be for everybody. Awesome. Thank you.
Right. Looks like we have a couple hands up. We have Barb Adams, and then we have Amanda Lewis after Barb.
Thanks. Hi, I'm at Finley. My first question is, what is the status of a citywide connection that I think Tom A. Hart spoke about? Maybe it's been a year or 2 now that he's talked about that. And my second point is just an opinion about all we did last year to bring those elementary students into the 21st century. And we would be a big proponent of students taking laptops home, continuing to learn online as well as in person. And I would like to see maybe a K-12, pre-K-12 effort rather than a split between elementary, secondary. I know there are differences, but our youngest students are quite adept. So thanks for that.
The citywide internet, I think that's what Dan,
Yes.
you alluded to that in that it's not this year, that it's part of that ongoing effort that we're involved in with the city to try and get that.
Right. So what I've heard so far is that it's at least a year out, at a minimum. They're still trying to get organized. So, well, on the other hand, we do have a seat at the table.
So that's kind of a piggyback as to what Beth put in the chat about summer connectivity. We've had parents already ask during registration, which started a week ago, about hotspots again. And I think people realize that digital divide is very real.
Mm-hmm.
So Connie, can you talk about survey?
Yeah. So I'm just looking at Beth's comment. Has there been any conversation about summer disconnectivity? I'm not sure I have a strong opinion either way. However, so many of our students were so engaged and connected this year in different ways. And when computers were returned along with hotspots, that disappeared. So we had the effort to bring back all of the computers, have students turn them in as opposed to keeping them over the summer. This is part of that one-to-one program that we need some input from the buildings to tell us how best to move forward with that. What we did, the benefit that we had for bringing all of the computers back in was that we kind of got not only what leased devices are missing, but what other devices are missing to try and understand what our fleet really looks like when we start the school year, and also cleaning and getting those ready to be handed back out. I know in other one-to-ones, like at North, they did collect every year and redid those over the summer to get back to the students. So I'm not saying no, we shouldn't give them over the summer, but that is some of the considerations that we took as we were trying to figure out what best to do with this equipment. It was handed out very quickly, very ill prepared, and we wanted to make sure that we got our hands back on those and got things shored up. As far as getting internet connectivity to students, one of the things that we are working with Shashank on that emergency connectivity fund, is that what it's called?
Correct.
That funding, it pays for laptops, he said, up to $400, and then $250 per hotspot that we could get and qualify for, or we have to apply and hopefully qualify for. Part of that is determining unmet needs. And so in order to figure out unmet needs, we need to survey families. So we are talking actively right now to the Infinite Campus team to see if they can add some questions onto registration. We know that started on the 12th, so we're behind the game, and what we can do to backtrack and get answers from families who have already registered to find out what that unmet need looks like. That will help with the funding and then the assignment of hotspots to students, and remembering that it's not per household, but per child. So looking at that need and trying to assess it.
We had a hand up there for a while. Who was that from? Amanda Lewis.
I, as a mother of a 13-year-old who seems to find his way around every type of internet block that we put in place, I wonder if it, and this is just a suggestion, that it might be wise to have a group of students also participate in vetting those 5 vendors you're looking at and put them to work seeing if they can get around it.
Oh, that's a smart idea, Amanda. Are you volunteering your 13-year-old for the task?
I'm sure he would help.
Another question about rethinking and redesigning our supports regarding technology at the building level. Can some of these funds help with that? The funds do not cover labor. They only cover equipment. That's a really unfortunate part of that. Trust me, we've asked every direction in every way we possibly can to try and figure out funding that we could put at the building level for that exact thing. We understand, and I see at least one person on this screen who is very heavily involved, Virginia, at Moulton, to try and do that work, and it was enormous heavy lifting for them at the buildings. So I can't say that I have a solution as far as funding for that. I know I've talked to HR quite a bit about the stipend.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was gonna have kind of a comment or question along those lines. I think that when you get together to talk about one-to-one, that's naturally where that conversation would go, is how do we sustain, I'm even thinking about my teachers as individuals, making sure that they understand and know how to do basic troubleshooting and helping their students so that it doesn't all land on someone's shoulders. So I think that when we have that one-to-one conversation, that's where we talk about the BTS and what it is, or, there's,
And
I
just,
always wondered
Virginia,
if you, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. It also encompasses training.
Mhm.
Teachers need to understand how best to use that technology.
Yep.
And that's a discussion that really has to be held.
Yep.
Mhm.
Has there ever been a discussion about the media specialist, the associate position, and perhaps how much we're spending on broken devices because we don't have a robust system to have one-to-one? I would imagine that the amount of money we're wasting on broken devices and how many hours a BTS worker is cleaning devices and putting tickets in, that you would far outweigh the cost by having an actual media specialist do that work, along with the associate stipend or FTE. Mm-hmm.
Yes, there has been some discussion on that. And again, a lot of that discussion is at the HR level and not really in technology. We'll give feedback, but we generally are, and this is we take what we can get
Mm-hmm.
for a building tech specialist, meaning that technology doesn't give as much input. We've had some buildings who've asked for input from technology as they look for people to fill those roles. But generally, whoever the building can find for that or HR deems appropriate, then we would then support them in that role.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beth has-
Steve Peterson, I think, has a hand up next.
Hi, and thank you for seconding that comment about the technology and covering the gaps there, and thanks for your work on that. There's no school media folk in here, and I just wanted to address that I found a disconnect between what the teachers were able to relate and what the resources that were available to them in the classroom were very, very difficult to get across. There's probably a lot of money being spent on resources, at the school level and at the AEAs that were kind of haphazardly passed through, and that was really disappointing and difficult to deal with. And I think you stress education. I don't know. This doesn't seem like the group is prepared to deal with that or is dealing with that here. So, I don't know what the pass through was. I know from previous dealings in my day job that it's very difficult to get that information down from like the AEA level into the individual classroom teachers, and there's so much happening in there. And judging it all against COVID is extremely difficult, of course, and how that operated on different levels in the school. But I wanted to address specifically the $400. I know the laptops are way more than $400. That's a problem. I work with public libraries, and they have a similar program. Same thing there. $400 isn't much to get you going, or something that's going to last very long. So, is there some, is it supplemental to your, if you get that funds, it'll supplement what you're doing with your laptops. There's, you think you can maintain that level of laptop?
Yes. Actually, I think we can. The $400 actually covers the lion's share of the cost of a laptop for a student. The average cost running over the last 6 or 7 years, if we average them all out, it comes out to about $600 a device. So $400 goes a long way towards that. The remaining 200, as I said before, we had this budgeted. We could do this. So when this money goes away, we will be able to sustain this, barring anything else going on in the funding of the district.
And how do you address if you're handing out hotspots? Do you know what company that goes through, and do they then provide filters for that? How does that work
Sure.
exactly? Do you have any
Exactly.
control over that?
We have actually 3 vendors for hotspots, and it has to do with the way the city of Des Moines is laid out. There are sections of town where T-Mobile doesn't work, or US Cellular doesn't work, or Verizon doesn't work, but somebody else does. And so we actually use all 3 of them in different parts of the district. In terms of filtering, our devices connect to, I can't stop you from connecting your personal device to these hotspots and then going off and doing whatever. But a district device, when it connects to the hotspot, the first thing it does is it creates a VPN tunnel to our network. And everything that goes through the Des Moines School Network gets filtered. And the laptops are configured so you cannot avoid that.
Okay, that explains part of that. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. But what really, they're going to be going back to hybrid, I'm assuming, in the fall, or not allowing for a hybrid, so it's still going to be exactly the same as last semester. So how are you going to address dealing with it? For the foreseeable future, we're going to be stuck with all the things we've had already in the past year. I mean, but what if this ever gets back to normal, how's that factoring in? I mean, what do you think this will look like? I don't have a question, but I think that's a big question of like, what do we do when we're not going to be having as much online learning options or having that split? And it's like that video too. There is no time for those kids to socialize with their full-time online kids versus in person. There were a few moments where my kids, had been able to connect with the offline kids in one way or another in playing or in some games. I mean, I don't know how you integrate that into things, but it's extremely difficult to do it half and half like they were doing this past year.
Mr. Peterson, could I step in and tell you what we've been talking about at Findlay? I don't know if your children are elementary or secondary, but we've been talking about how we want to take all of those great things that happened during COVID and continue them. And teachers have been talking about unfinished assignments during the day, how students will read teacher comments or listen to teacher audio about their writing very differently through technology than they will in the classroom. So we're really positive about how we can merge the two, and that's why we're real proponents of elementary students taking home their laptops each night so that they can really become 21st century learners and not go back to where we were a couple of years ago. And also, we have the capability, I hate to say that we play Big Brother a little bit, but we do, because we're a smaller school. We have the capability of logging into every student's device with their username and password. And I tell parents when a student has been inappropriate, either in a chat or on websites that they've gotten around, that it's a learning opportunity. And aren't we glad to have our students learn when they're 10, 11, and 12 about online safety, rather than when they're 16, 17, and it can be a huge problem. That's my personal opinion, but I feel that we are at the cusp of doing all the best things for our students that we can if we are proactive and on top of it. I'm not sure if that addresses what you were thinking about.
I know that really helps, and I'm encouraged by what you said. I just hoping that can be kind of applied at some level uniformly, and just going back to those resources, it was extremely hard to get those working correctly in the classroom, and I tried to push it because I knew it was important and they could use it, but I know that there's lots, you could see the stats of all the rest of the classroom, for example, in my daughter's class, and one or two kids are reading all the books, the rest of the kids aren't doing any of the work there, and so I mean it wasn't assigned, so that's just how it kind of goes, and it's a real shame because I thought a lot of resources got left, and everything's up in the air, and no one could integrate that stuff. But I just, it's a problem across the board that we put a lot of money into those resources and they don't get utilized, and that's a real shame. So.
Jake, this is Beth. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you say? What resources are you referring to?
I was talking about my camera will not turn on. I was issued like 3 different photocopy documents, little things here. There was like, this is how you log into this. This is how you log into this. This is how you log into this. You could not save the login credentials for any of that across logins. So it was nearly impossible for my 7-year-old in 1st grade to do that every time. It was hard to work around those things. I don't know if there's any way to fix that, make it a captured thing or a portal. You're already in a VPN. I don't know what it would take, but it sure is nice if I work with public libraries. I'm not working in a public library, but at most public libraries or a research university or most things they'll run into, if you're on campus, you can get right into those databases you want to search. It's all authenticated as to the location, or you have the power to save your passwords for some things. I mean, I get, not wanting everything to be saved, but what harm is there for the VPN laptop that's already, in the district network to save the credentials to get into whatever ebook resources you're talking about? So it was difficult to cross-platform to from us, the AEA, on the same level. So I could tell you all the databases. There's a lot. The AEA has a huge list of them. The districts have different ones. It was varying across what we could get into. And obviously, some would work and some wouldn't, even though we were trying to get into them from one time to the next. But we used, what was I can't even think of it now. It had a ton of graphic novels in it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
And it gave you a little.
What do you call those Heartland resources? Yes, I know what you're talking about.
It wasn't the Mackin one. It was
Right.
a slightly different one, but Mackin is the big one at the AEAs, for example. I mean, it's a good example of what I'm talking about. We're going to really good, like an excellent ebook platform, and it was difficult to get into it.
And don't you think what you're describing is, I think, what I feel like is needed desperately, and that is embedding it into our curriculum and how it's involved in our teaching, so that it happens at home and it's all infused and balanced. And I think our teachers and everybody has done, and parents and students have just done amazing during this time. But now it's a time to kind of, where can we where's the floor, right? So that we can all ensure that that we're really clear about our computers going home or not. I mean, if Finley's sending them home, but Moore is not, that creates a gap. And
Right.
so we've got to find a way to standardize our expectation and then coach up our buildings and our tech people and our principals and our teachers and our parents. And so I am just going to say to Dan, you and Connie, we're here for that. If we need to be talking to curriculum, if we need to be talking to HR, that should not be our barrier for supporting our tech specialists or our library associates or our parents.
I want to weigh in on what Jay was talking about. You'll be happy to know that we just spent the last several weeks improving our pass-through authentication in our Microsoft tenant. I could get way into the weeds for all of that, but I can assure you that we are working very hard so that students don't have to log in every time they turn around. It would be helpful for you to share with me the platform that you were specifically talking about, that ebook one, so for us to take a look at and see if that's on the list of integrated logins that we have been working on.
Yeah, sure. I'll go try and figure that out. Thanks, Connie.
Okay, thank you. And Joe asked, is that Epic? Was it Epic or Destiny?
Yeah.
It may have been Epic. I think that's ringing a bell.
Okay. So we're trying to work very hard to get that going, and I appreciate any help that anyone can provide at the administrative level, especially now when we are doing what we can to keep the wheels on and doing what we can to technologically do what needs to be done, like this pass through and Intune and all of these things that seem like a lot of work, that we're trying to provide an easier time as we move forward. We know how to do that in technology, but we can't necessarily impact the curriculum side of things, the staffing, the HR, that type of thing. We try, and they hear from us often, but more voices wouldn't hurt on that. So yes, we'll reach out, and Dan and I are actively working on our one-to-one program, and that's been fun.
I was going to say I'm at 11 pages now.
Yeah, 11 pages.
As part of this work tonight, is that part of what you're gathering from these stakeholders, is recommendations?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, if I could present to you my one-to-one plan tonight and have you poke holes in that, we would love that. But that's not quite where we're at. So any input that you have as we move forward, that's certainly going to be valuable. And I think we just need to get more people at the table to help guide us to make sure that we're doing the right by the buildings and the kids.
Yeah, we can talk logistics and technology, hardware, and what we think people need till we're blue in the face. But we need folks from the trenches telling us how it's being interpreted, how it's being used, how it's best used in the classroom, how we can best manage it from a teacher perspective.
One thing I'd like to lift up is this is kind of the opposite of the ESSA money, is like the charging of families. I felt very weird about when I charge a family and when I don't charge a family. And, there were so many situations where families were put out, or they didn't have their home, or their home got taken. And so I think we really need to have a conversation about equity and charging and what that looks like and means. Yeah, neither did Barb.
Yeah. We've heard across the board, we've heard a variety of approaches. Some buildings are right on it and they do it, others do not. And I'm not going to weigh in, because in technology, we wish that we had the money back, but we also know that families, this is not a reasonable expectation. But I did want to, and that is on our list.
Okay.
Joe asked the question, professional learning for teachers and staff and community. I would like to point out, we bought 12,000 some Surface laptops from Microsoft, and part of that agreement was to provide training. So we are meeting with, we just had a meeting last week with Community Services, Vanessa Howell and Laura McAtee, to start to provide training, Microsoft related, so it would be Windows and any products around Office 365 that we can provide for families, multilingual training that we can offer. And so we've got a variety of opportunities through, quote, the Microsoft Store that would be extended to teachers, staff, and community. So we're pretty excited about that, all free of charge as part of the purchase of the Microsoft Surface. So
Excellent. That's great to hear. And I obviously, one step at a time, I think if we're able to do that and hopefully do that successfully, then I would maybe throw out as an idea is what are some other platforms that are commonly used? For example, if Epic is a pretty common platform across elementary buildings, could we put together some learning for families on that? Whether it even be something as simple as how to log in. Is it something that times out? Like I know for Epic, after a certain time, my kids couldn't get into it unless I signed in for them. Just things like that, that a parent who is either not very technology savvy or just very, very busy may not have time to figure it out on their own, but we can help them out with that. Even something as simple as the parent portal. I know that all of our buildings, we have conversations with families about how to use it, what you can do with it. But if there was something from district technology where really these are the experts that can walk through from step one all the features of the parent portal, I bet you I would learn something from that. And I'm a parent and an administrator, and I would learn something if there was a course like that. Like I said, I love the Microsoft. I would hopefully, if we can continue that and continue branching out, I think that would be great.
I appreciate that input. One of the things that I can offer is technology only. This sounds bad. We know Microsoft, we know Windows. When you talk about parent portal and curriculum-based products, that expertise lies elsewhere. That doesn't mean that technology can't be part of some kind of offering, but that would definitely be looking at curriculum or the assessment team who they own those products, so to speak. We would love to be experts in everything, but we certainly are not. And it looks like Epic is the magic product that we are looking at, and a little bit of Destiny. We have Destiny, but I don't know that we're using it except for inventory purposes and then checkout in the libraries, but I don't know what else we use that for.
We use Destiny for ebooks too.
Okay, got it.
And again, that would be curriculum. That would have to provide some support on that.
I'm interested for the pass-through authentication, just to be clear. Not that I'm not interested in providing training on any other those products, but I will take back and see if those are on the list.
It sounds like we're all in agreement that we gave students technology because we had to, without, and this is, Virginia, this is why we didn't charge. We didn't tell families when we gave them laptops that they would be charged for them. We just felt like that wasn't equitable. When you and I are both in 100% free and reduced lunch schools, and we didn't give them, the families, the professional learning, and in some cases, even the students. So that's why I think we're in such a super spot right now. We know what we need. We know how to start the year. We know how to do it better. I just think we're going to have a great year because we can. My only wish is doing all these online registrations. It sure would have been nice if somewhere in that online registration it would say a laptop costs this, a charger costs this, a bag costs this, just like when students get a musical instrument. Or Joe, tell me, do they get something when they're in middle school and they go out for sports? Is there something written about here's what you're going to be issued and this is the replacement cost? That doesn't sound always equitable in my mind either, but we just weren't upfront about it in the beginning because we couldn't be. No blame, nowhere.
No, you know, when we rolled things out in the spring, we had about 2 weeks worth of planning, which was just not enough for anything. We were happy to have them somewhat sanitized, not cleaned, sanitized. We were happy to hand them a computer that was in good working condition, because some of them actually weren't. We handed out laptops that were missing keys. I've heard about this on the back end. And that's very unfortunate, but it was what it was. And anything that came in for repair in August and September that we would have normally considered an intentional fix, intentional damage, that certainly did not get sent to the schools, because there was no way of telling that it was that kid or that student. And it just, it wasn't fair. On the other hand, technology was obligated by business and finance rules to apply things the way we did. So the whole concept of charging students, that's a conversation that has to be held. But it's above technology. That's a business and finance decision. That's a equity decision. And that's something that's a conversation that really ought to be held.
I think Jessica's had her hand up for a bit, and then Beth has a question I'll answer.
Oh, thanks. Mine's not really a question so much as a statement. And one of the things that I noticed about this past school year, and at Central Academy, almost all of our classes were virtual for the entire year. For the entire year. So one of the things that was really helpful throughout the course of the year was having some consistent standards across the entire district using Teams, everybody using Teams, not some people using Teams and some people using Google Meets and some people using, one platform, having Canvas, and having that integrate with our Infinite Campus and all of those resources. Having that consistency was really incredibly important for our teacher support, for our, like myself and my instructional coach, to go out and to work with our teachers about how to do things. Just having a consistency there was really critical to that success. And I would say that we had a lot of success. I mean, my teachers aren't really interested in running a lot of photocopies off on the copier anymore. They want to post things on Canvas and have kids download and submit virtually, because it's so much easier than dragging around big, heavy bags of papers. And they like the date stamp, this is when it was turned in and this is when I gave you comments, and having that trackability is a value. So I really appreciated those particular features and that we held to that, and we've done that for years, but it really paid big dividends in this past year, in particular for my site and my school. And also helped us when we're talking to students about how do you do this. They can very clearly see, oh, this is how I turn things in. There was one way to do it across all their classes. It was so helpful. So thank you. That was my comment.
Thank you. Beth, you asked why the money can't, with the money, can't every school establish a technology family center where parents can come in and apply for a job, pay bills, do laundry, chat? I love all of that. I don't think the funding would support it based on the guidelines, but I think that is just, smart way to look at that. I wish I could, not that I won't take that down as a great suggestion. Somebody somewhere might listen.
Well, and I just think, thinking a little bit about just the overall money with SEL and building relationships with our community, if we could just think a little bit differently about the word sustainability, I just feel like there's some things that we can do differently that I think would push us for things like that, and potentially, support sustainable efforts K-12.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I could go back to some of Jay's comments about libraries, we've had some fits and starts with the Des Moines Public Library. And I've tried to use my personal connections. So my husband has been on the Des Moines Library Board of Trustees. He was on for about 9 years. He's been off now for 3, maybe. So we tried, you know, I probably had 2 meetings with Greg Hyde, and I've had, I think, 2 meetings with Sue Woody about like, how can we, like, what's our common goal? Like, what's one project we could do together? And it never pans out. Like, because they're thinking, like, we're going to come into their place and provide them extra resources, and we're thinking they're going to come into our space. Like, it's like these 2 underfunded, understaffed entities thinking, oh, maybe I can get a little juice out of this other entity. But we went up to St. Paul, Minnesota over the 4th weekend, and we went into a public library because it was this beautiful building we walked by, and I went in there and walked in, and they had a St. Paul Public Schools Welcome Center right there. And the library staff had the ability to register kids for school and orient them to St. Paul Public Schools right there at the checkout desk. I kind of asked them how it worked. They said, well, the public district just kind of, they give us a little bit of money and they kind of take the reins off. They give us the freedom, they give us the training. And I mean, if, you know, so I don't know if Jay, if you want to work your connections, you can work my connections. But like, that's the kind of stuff we need to be doing, is think different, like not thinking about how can I, because I think we have, I mean, to be honest, we probably have in the, how can DMPS exploit the public libraries, and then the public libraries going to, how can I exploit DMPS to get what I want? We need to be more aligned in our thinking. So I don't know if Jay, you have any other thoughts about that?
I don't have a good, super good answer for that. That's a great point, but I don't, you know, I don't know how, you know, and I know that they're kind of, there's a lot of problems on, you know, school media, school librarians, you know, and them integrating in the schools, and that's a problem across the state, and having those out there too, and having those, you know, because the state doesn't require you have one everywhere anymore, and so it gets cut a lot. And I know that I relate most to the school librarian at my children's school right now, and she did a lot of wonderful laptop support and did all that stuff, and did, you know, talk about the public libraries, but what the library had too. You know, and we've had people come in who were, you know, school librarians, and who were very much pushing, you know, have more children come to the, you know, not just come to the public library, but use the school library like in the summer. And we were like, what? Is that a thing you could do? Like, that's not a thing. It was even really shocking to me, like that would even be a consideration. But, you know, I know in other towns, they literally like will bus kids to the public library from the public school and get them all a library card. You know, I don't know, you know, and what's the, you know, English as a second language support, for example, like the Eastside Library, just, you know, it's the one I know, it's my local one. They have a ton of Spanish language speakers, you know, that some of the other branches do as well. And so that would be really cool. I don't know how we put those things together, but it's a great idea. I mean, that would be a neat project, but totally, you know, it seems like it's outside the realm of like even talking about tech and what you're giving them in laptops and broadband and all those things, which, you know, and I'll tell you, public libraries are out there trying to hand out hotspots as well all the time. So people in this room know that it's not just the public schools trying to do it. They're trying to do it at the public library level as well. And, you know, that was a big hurdle for the public libraries, to put filters on those hotspots. It's a little easier for schools to do it. They're used to doing it. Public libraries don't have as much resources to do that. So that's kind of a problem with that, this round of grants, is that, you know, hey, you can do all this stuff to do off-campus learning and support one-to-one, and, you know, do what you can to get internet in your least served areas, but you know, we're talking about libraries that don't have any tech people and can't can't support that sort of stuff and have never tried to filter a hotspot. You know, they don't barely even know what it is. You know, so at least we're lucky here. You have 4 different vendors to supply hotspots, because there's a lot of public libraries in Iowa that have 0 hotspot vendors. So we're very lucky that we even have that. But that's why there's that push in the whole state to get more connectivity and speeds. And you know, I feel like this conversation is all about speed, or it's all about what the technology's there, but it's like, how did that actually translate to what worked on the ground? And I think we've all saw that in the past year of like the online classroom was extremely difficult for the students to get connected to. It was, you know, every household was different. It was hard to connect to all of them. The teachers really struggled. And, you know, knowing we're going to go back into another year of this with no change at all, of having it be exactly the same as the last 6 months of the school year, it's just a daunting task, and I don't have any solution. I wish I had a good solution. Sorry to just, you know, but I don't know how you make the two things connect, because it's like you can connect them, but then there's no content sometimes, you know, or they're stuck, you know, each teacher's using a different thing. So like everything my son did got reported in Canva or something along those lines, or in Microsoft, but then the one teacher was using the class dojo to do things, and those were frustrating. Do you have any? You don't relate to that at all either? That isn't part of this group, but like it seemed like it changed. Every grade level was doing something different. Every teacher was doing something different in terms of reporting classroom stuff.
Wow.
That kind of goes back to Joe's comment about future conversations around technology needs to include some curriculum folks.
Yeah. Did we get all of the questions addressed that were in the chat?
Beth Sloan made a comment about this is exactly what we should be doing. It's similar to spaces like Drake, Grandview, iCubs, Polk County offices, partnering with everybody. And you know, I think partly that's what this Greater Des Moines partnership, trying to find internet for all, is trying to accomplish. I look forward to seeing what they come up with for a solution.
Dan, I just have a quick clarification. When you showed the slide about year 1, year 2, year 3, yeah. I didn't notice any differences on those years. Is that correct?
That's not
yes.
entirely correct.
Sustain.
It's yeah. So there were some minor changes. If you want, I can pull up the slide again.
We have sharing capability now.
We have sharing capability. Awesome. So give me 2 shakes here. Just got to pick the right window. I believe this is what we're looking for. So you got a nice clear view of this now. You'll see that in 21-22, we're going to further development our one-to-one device program. In the next 2 years, we're going to sustain it. For internet connectivity, we're going to sustain our existing internet connectivity as best we can. In 22-23, we're hoping that this Greater Des Moines thing is coming together, and we're going to develop those partnerships, and we're going to continue that in the following year. The Family and Student Technical Support Desk is actually, from the feedback that we've gotten, is a hit. People are happy with it. The only thing they don't like is that sometimes they get put on hold, and that's simply because the number of people that are calling in. And we've tried to augment that as best we can. Cybersecurity, you'll notice right across the board, it's all the same. Continue the cybersecurity diligence upgrades as needed. And the same with the next two. Well, I guess at the bottom, we have implement the virtual campus secondary program. So what we're really talking about there is adding the middle school. That's a curriculum program. That's really driving it. And that was at the request of parents. So we're going to continue to sustain, from a technology perspective, what we're talking about is providing support to that program. So if everything remains constant and we go back to school in the fall, just like we are, or just like we wrapped up, there's going to be a face-to-face program. There's going to be a middle school virtual campus. There's going to be a high school virtual campus. And hopefully that will go smoothly. On the other hand, we cannot predict the future. And if the state goes crazy and we all go home again, we will be prepared for that as well.
Dan, the question was raised, what do you mean by further development of software integration?
Well, that's a good question.
Well, we talked about this. We had it broken down and then we just sort of categorized it. So we were talking about what Joe brought up as far as, the monitoring software. We talked about Canvas because, of course, Canvas and Teams have some integration that are coming on board to connect meetings and create teams automatically. Those kinds of things. We're looking at other options that we can provide. And as Joe suggested, curriculum should probably be in this conversation with us to help explain that a little bit more.
I think that's a fair point.
And then we have some good suggestions about educating parents. What if we could leverage something else? We're spending a lot of money. Could software companies provide tutorial videos for families is a question. That's what Microsoft is hoping to provide for us. We've got that in our leveraged. And then I would say, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, those connections with curriculum products, those are connections that live in the curriculum area, not technology. Should we all be planning for all of us going virtual again someday? Yeah, we're prepared at the are we prepared at the elementary level? Canvas is not something I don't believe elementary is using as a platform with students, but maybe I missed something.
I'm at least aware of at least one elementary school that used Canvas.
That would be Moulton?
Yeah, because my wife.
He has an inside there. His wife is a teacher at Moulton.
But I think that's probably taking, future forward.
Yeah.
Like, so if I'm a teacher, am I going to put all my lessons on Canvas for students who might miss for various reasons, be absent for various reasons?
So the problem you run into there is you're now developing your teaching for two platforms, really. And that's double the work for your teacher. So unless your teacher is teaching primarily to the technology platform, and that just happens to be face-to-face, you're going to have to come up with two different instructional.
No, I'm not saying that. Holy cow, we've done that. We're not doing that again. But what I'm saying is, let's be honest. We could have kids home for 2 weeks this winter. What are they going to do? You got a second grader who's not in front of a teacher for 2 weeks.
Right.
So Beth, there are platforms that allow you to record classroom sessions. We haven't explored that to any great extent. I know it's used intensively at the university levels, where they will record classes as they're being given, and then if somebody just misses it, you're there.
I think what I was wondering, Dan, though, is like thinking a little bit about it, and I know this goes against all that we believe, but let's say Beth is homesick for 3 weeks. I might have Joe as my teacher, no longer Connie. So for 3 weeks, I have Joe, who's the virtual second grade teacher for Des Moines Public Schools. At least that child is not missing instruction, and they're involved in teaching. I just wonder if this money should be spent on crafting a system that's, systematic.
I think everybody would be in agreement with that. My understanding is the regulations around the expenditure of that money is not something that supports anything beyond connectivity, hardware purchases, student hardware. I mean, I don't hear anything about, Dan and Mary, correct me, but, and Mimi's on here too, that funding is so limited.
Yeah, Connie, it is very limited. So like you said, it's, to be spent on connectivity. So that would be any hotspots, computer hardware, things like that. It doesn't allow us to stretch it out to anything beyond that. That's would be technology wise, unfortunately. And so we're pretty limited at what we can spend those dollars on, technology wise, unfortunately.
Right. And we have tried a lot of different angles. I know Dan Sloan had some suggestions, hoping that funding ideas would, like headsets and Go Guardian and all of these things we tried, and they are just not part of the.
Yeah, got shot down on a lot of it, but we're hoping.
Yeah.
We're continually looking.
We try to push the envelope too in business and finance, and it's a no-go. So.
And Virginia, to your comment about projectors, next board meeting, that it's going to the next board to get approved. But we have a funding set aside in PEPL to replace the projectors in the district over the next 4 years.
So do you guys believe, I know this is a technology component, but do you believe that there could be some conversation from this group to curriculum, to all the other buckets of money related to things that we just talked about, or should I just be quiet?
No, don't ever be quiet, because I think these are all really out of the box creative ideas and solutions. And what I don't want to do is say, well, technology pointed me this way and curriculum pointed me back to technology, and we have that ongoing tug and pull. That is, we certainly work together. We're not siloed. Funding wise, we may be, but I feel like I can take conversations somewhere. I'm not exactly sure. I think, Mary, you might be a good resource for us as you talk with folks at different levels. Dan and I don't have those conversations with, cabinet and chiefs and that kind of thing. We're not part of that, so.
But the whole point of this session is to gather information from you folks so that we can come up with better plans for the district.
Well, can I just say, don't ever get rid of touchscreen laptops. I don't know what my children would have done without those. So if you suddenly decide to go back to not doing that, please don't.
That's great feedback. It is. It truly is. We've had those conversations. And the new
As
device.
a kindergarten parent, I agree.
Yeah, they're good. That's good to know. Saved a lot of lives. I'm glad to hear that, Beth. Very good.
As the facilitator, I have to point your attention to it. It is 8:07, and we were scheduled to close at 8. And I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I did want to close optimistically with, I hope. So I've been taking notes. I'm at least getting the questions and the comments. I haven't, but we can always go back and watch this for the responses to make sure we've captured everything. And we will go back breakout session to breakout session and compare notes. And we are going to post this all to the website for those that wanted to attend multiple sessions or had a conflict tonight. So we'll shoot out that link, and the communications team e-newsletter the week when that's all ready. And that also will include the link to that survey that Shashank put up on the screen. So in closing tonight, we're all about the optimistic close. So if you would want to share verbally or put in the chat just one word that describes how you're feeling about our collective work at DMPS as an organization and community moving this forward.
Nope. That's 4 words. Ah.
I would say energized is mine. You know, sometimes it's a grind, and then you come to events like this where you actually get to talk to people, and it reminds you why you do the things you do. So thank you all for your time, and thank you, Dan and Connie, for a wonderful presentation and fielding of many varied questions.
Hey, we've been doing this all year.